When I started the book, I did not know there was going to be a ghost in it. And then, as one of the characters, Kim, is driving to the party, I was driving kind of through the Texas Hill Country thinking about that scene. And she just kind of started talking about this legend of the town that people had told her. And it's based on a kind of La Llorona story, or there is a local legend here. There's a river called, or a creek, I guess, called Woman Hollering Creek, and it has this kind of similar to La Llorona, like the ghost of a woman haunting this body of water who's wailing. Like that's what people usually hear. And so there, I found out that there in like a lot of cultures have this wailing woman, and it's often a failed mother, meaning like her child died and that she died in childbirth, or her kids died. And I just thought it was this really interesting concept of a ghost that is kind of a town legend, like a message of warning to people. And I thought my book is so much about motherhood and about kind of the way that women, I think, feel dismissed or erased. And it's like the mother refuses to be forgotten. She refuses to be erased. And I thought she just fit. And so to me, she's just kind of the spirit of motherhood, in the way that motherhood is so kind of can be like violently protective. Kim is sort of the ghost of the house. The mother kind of works as a metaphor for all the women in different ways, which is funny because, like I said, I didn't know I was gonna have the ghost in it, so I don't know how instinctually I knew this character was needed. But I I like her as this kind of gothic figure because I feel like in a lot of gothic literature there's kind of that, like, there's a creepy servant, or Mrs. Danvers and Rebecca, like that type of character that's just kind of like a gargoyle in the shadows or something. So I really liked that as her role. And then as the book grew, she became such this superstitious presence, and just kind of this like continuous morbid warnings. And so trying to infuse the book with that sense of dread. Kim was the most fun to write because like she's very different from me. I am like a people pleaser, and Kim, it was fun to be kind of unapologetic in that, in her anger. I think also I started a lot of the characters, something that I don't know if I'm going to ramble too much here, but something that I noticed in my writing journey was that my side characters would be more interesting than my main character. My main character was always just kind of like this bland person that didn't like a vessel for the story. But my side characters would always start as these cartoon ideas, like, oh, I need a nosy neighbor, or I need, a like a cop that's in the way. And then, but then, like, as you wrote them, they would always grow complexity and they would become kind of way better characters than my main character. And so with this book, I thought I'm going to start everybody with this kind of like cartoon seed of a start. Like, and I actually titled them, like, Michaela was the lovesick teen, Kim was the bitter ex-wife, Danny was like the anxious new mom, and Orla was the creepy old nanny. And then they grew complexity from there. So Kim always started with this seed of resentment that was, once I found that seed, and I think like the first scene I wrote with her was her, checking the Instagram of her ex-husband's new, young, beautiful wife in their home that they built together. And you would just be so angry. And then you add like wine as fuel to that anger, and it was just go from there. So Michaela is another 16-year-old girl. She's the birthday girl's best friend. But the birthday girl is this kind of, she's on the cheerleading squad. She's got, the big mansion and the blonde, beautiful hair, and she is popular. And Michaela has been her friend since they were 4, I think. And she is like the FFA girl, the Future Farmer of America girl. She is kind of the opposite of this cheerleading crowd. And so I think really all of my women feel unseen in a way. And Michaela is kind of the teenage version of a girl that feels unseen. That's the thing about a party is like you need to have a lot of other people. And so the book does have a lot of characters, but hopefully the kind of central characters keep everything straight when you're reading it. But yeah, so I did have to have a group of teenagers and what all their dynamics would be. And the teenagers actually kind of came last to me. I was just like, oh, the teenagers will be doing something over here. But I knew that because I wanted Michaela to be this kind of a girl that felt unseen, then it made sense to kind of have this cluster of like the popular girls. And if you have this cluster of the popular girls, there always has to be like the queen bee. So I have Gabby, who's kind of the queen bee. And I wanted to get it right in the way that teenage girls can be catty towards each other because I think often it's not obvious, you know? It's not this kind of like, your outfit's ugly. Like nobody would say that. But instead it would be these kind of tiny little barbs like death by a thousand cuts. And so that was fun, even though it was fun to kind of like pull back into when I was a teenager or go to the coffee shop and listen to the girls that would sit by me like at Starbucks with all their drinks and kind of try to like steal their little barbs at each other. The mansion evolved through the writing process, but I knew I wanted to write this kind of big lavish party because there's something fun about that escape into like there's something fun about rich people behaving badly. There's something fun about escaping into like the glitz of this party that we wish we were invited to. But also I live in Bulverde, which is where the book is set. And there are it's the Texas Hill Country, so there's all these big hills that are beautiful. And I live in like a little postage stamp suburb house, but when I go on walks, you can see these big houses up on the hill. And there was one in particular. There's a road, 1863, that has like a sheer cliff just right up against it. And right on the edge of this cliff, there was this house that's almost all windows in the back. And it's so hanging off the cliff. It almost looks like the limestone's like eroded beneath it and it's going to fall any day now. So whenever I drive by that house, it would just always kind of capture my attention. And then once I started writing it, there's a ghost element to the book, the mother, that I did not plan her. She just kind of showed up and demanded to be part of the book. And so as she became part of the book, the house became kind of more elaborate. It became this Gothic mansion, this old Victorian renovated house. The house is a little bit based on a house that is probably about 2 hours away from where I live in I think it's Mason, Texas, but it's called the Sequest House. And it is this ginormous Victorian limestone brick house that was built by German immigrants. And that because German immigrants settled a lot in the Texas Hill Country. So we have all these towns like Green, that's spelled like Gruene, or Fredericksburg or New Braunfels, that are very German influenced. And so that was kind of the uh, inspiration a little bit for the actual house and the architecture. There's no ghost story attached to the Sequest house. And then the ghost story itself came from, like I said, I thought the idea of this wailing woman, but I knew she had to be a mother and that she had to be like a failed mother in that sense. And so I started reading all of these different accounts of people in, the early 1900s, late 1800s. Dialogue is always, in a way, easier for me because I just kind of like act it out until it feels like something people would actually say. I think also because I am naturally more shy and because I was always kind of that outsider, I'm it's like childhood trained me to be an observer. And so also always being the outsider means that you are kind of aware of the quirks of different people in different places. Like I've spent a lot of time. I went to high school in California, but then I've lived a lot of my adult life in Texas, or I lived in Virginia or Japan. Like, so you notice like how people are different and how the ways that they speak are different. So just from like a writing dialogue perspective, I think it's really fun to act those things out and until you get it right. But I think the character voice really comes to me more in their head. And then once you have that voice, once you feel like you know the character and you can act them out, the writing's a lot easier, but it's not always easy to get to that place.